Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 73rd level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 60 orc shaman, and I'm joined for the very first time on the show by two very special guests. We're going to start with the level 60 undead rogue, Mr. Seth Sturgill. How's it going, Seth?
I'm so excited to do this, and I do appreciate, Ryan, the usage of level 60, the vanilla WoW level cap. I do appreciate that.
It's also currently the current level cap for WoW as well.
Oh, nice.
Because they did a level squish not too long ago. But
I love this.
We are also joined by the level 60 gnome mage. Lockleth is also here. Hello, Lockleth.
I are here.
Oh my god. I'm so excited for this episode, y'all, because, ever since the inception of the RPG Cave, ever since, Garret and I decided to do this very silly, role-playing game show where we talk about RPGs every single week, one of the 5 games that started on my very, beginning list of episodes I want to do for the show was an episode about World of Warcraft, and it was just all about trying to find the right fit for people to be on the show. But luckily, it just so happens we happen to get 2 new recruits at Carpool Gaming who both played World of Warcraft. So it was only inevitable that we put together a World of Warcraft episode. And of course, it's a very timely episode too, because one, we're actually celebrating the 18th birthday of World of Warcraft this week. But then there's also a brand new World of Warcraft expansion, Dragonflight, which is out right now. It came out 2 hours ago from the time we're recording this. So it all makes sense. We put lots of thought into planning the show. But before we go into the show proper, we got to clear the dungeon of these pesky mobs. So folks, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, don't forget to like the live stream or the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and then ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live, like with live stream like this one, or whenever we put up a new video on the channel, like Lockleth's first impressions of Harvestella, which is an RPG. So I'm going to shout it out on this podcast. So go check that out as well. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe there if you haven't subscribed already, and then rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also, if you want, this show a little bit early or some exclusive content like the 4.5 hour episode of Sweet Hangs, head on over to patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. And holy crap, I can't speak tonight, folks. So it is time to read from the secret text. We're just jumping into this because that's just what we do on the show. So it is time for us to talk about World of Warcraft. So what I wanted to do, first of all, is we're gonna go around the table. We're gonna kind of talk about, how we got into the game. We're gonna talk about, our favorite memories with World of Warcraft. We just want to look back on the game as a whole. We're not really focusing on the in-game mechanics of modern WoW, or we're not going to focus on WoW class or anything like that. It's just going to be, us, 3 WoW vets just sitting around the table and just talking about, our time with the game. So I thought the best place to start, of course, is to talk about how we got in the game and when we got into the game. So Seth, I'm going to go to you first because I'm curious to know, when did you get into World of Warcraft, and do you remember why you started playing in the first place?
Yeah, so I got into World of Warcraft. It was before Burning Crusade came out. Probably, I would say, because Burning Crusade, I think, was 2007, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think so. I think it was definitely earlier than that. But I'll fact check it while you continue talking.
Got it. It was a year, maybe a year and a half before Burning Crusade came out is when I got into it. But the seed was planted by actually my youth pastor at church. Okay. Ironically enough, he was his name was Thomas, and he was a huge Warcraft fan. He introduced me to Warcraft 3, and we played a ton of Warcraft 3 together. And kind of a small group of us at church would play Warcraft 3 together on the weekends. And then he introduced us to WoW and spiraled into this multi-year obsession with it. Again, just back in the vanilla days. Those are very precious memories to me. I maintain, and I haven't kept up with WoW on a consistent basis since Cataclysm. But that period of my life, I would say between vanilla and Wrath, was peak gaming memories for me. That was just unmatched gaming memories. It's a very, very special game to me.
Nice. That's awesome. So first of all, you were actually spot on. 2007. It was January of 2007.
January.
Which is why like I thought maybe it was 2006, but I couldn't remember. But you're right. 2007, Burning Crusade came out, and yeah, definitely that makes a lot of sense. That's cool. And Lockleth, what about you? How did you get started with the game?
So I started playing it because my brother got it first, and he's the one that got really into it. That's kind of how my journey has always been with games. I always follow my brother's footsteps. And I think I started playing it like 15, 16 years ago, I'm pretty sure. And so I can't tell you what expansions were out and all of that, but I just know it was kind of early still. What is it? The 18th anniversary you said?
18th
right?
anniversary. So like if it was like 15 years ago, it would have actually probably been around the same time that Seth started. So probably
Okay.
like Vanilla or Burning Crusade.
Yeah. Yes. I remember it being very, very early stages, for sure. But WoW is where Lockleth came from initially. It's where the name started. It's what I named my very first character. It's the first name I came up with. So it has followed me. The name has followed me since I played in high school. So
Nice. Now, real talk, did the name Lockleth, was it an original Lockleth creation, or was it, from the random name generator for your character?
no, I literally was at the screen of naming the character, and I don't know what came over me, but I literally thought of Locke, and then what sounds good with that at the end was just Leth at the end. I don't know where it came from. Just came to me, typed it in, and there you go.
Okay. Because like Lockleth's like a very like elvish sounding name, so it almost like it's a name that I could foresee being in like the Night Elf or the Blood Elf like random name generator. So I was kind of curious about that because like for me personally, I actually mostly go with random names in World of Warcraft. Especially because like we're kind of at the point now in World of Warcraft where like it's very hard to come up with an original name that hasn't been taken already, because it does like all the old names kind of stack. So like there can only be one Lockleth, or there can only be one Ryan on World of Warcraft. So you kind of have to. So it's so hard to come up with a name now that just the random name generator usually will come up with a name that's not taken. But even then, it's like sometimes those names aren't even taken either, or taken too. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But as for me,
I wasn't intelligent enough to know about the name generator to even think of that as a solution. So
yeah, gotcha. And actually, to point out Sean's point in the chat, there can only be one Ryan left. There's actually, for a while, one of the tricks you could actually do in World of Warcraft is for the name, you could use a special character with there's an A with an O over it, for example. So I actually had the character name Ryan in World of Warcraft for the longest time, and it just had like the A with like the circle over the A. And that's how I got away with it. But you saw people do all kinds of crazy stuff to get like the name that they wanted, with like all these random special characters that just don't make any sense otherwise, or just when you'd say the name out loud, it would obviously not be the name that you'd want it to be, which is kind of cool. But as for me, I'm also like all three of us are longtime World of Warcraft players, because I actually, first of all, I was a huge Warcraft 3 fan. As Seth kind of alluded to, like that's a game that I really loved because I love real-time strategy games. Going all the way back to Warcraft 1, like I've played every single Warcraft game. I mean, there's not a ton of them, so I mean, there wasn't a ton to choose from. But original Warcraft 2 was fun, although I hate pirates, so I was less into Warcraft 2. But Warcraft 3, I spent so much time playing that game. It was kind of ridiculous. Like me and my cousin would spend just so much time on our laptops in the basement, just playing, multiplayer with each other, with friends on the internet and stuff like that. It was such a fun time. So when World of Warcraft was getting ready to come out, I was someone who was actually commonly picked a lot of times for Blizzard beta tests. I beta tested Diablo 2, I beta tested World of Warcraft, I beta tested Warcraft 3, I beta tested StarCraft 2, like pretty much every Blizzard game up until like the Mists of Pandaria expansion for World of Warcraft. I actually beta tested every single one of them. So I actually got
flex.
I mean, it's just one of those things where I play a lot of Blizzard games. So it's just when they look at, because they have access to all your analytics even back then,
right,
on the back end through Battle.net. So they could see how much you were playing the game. And those were the people that usually got picked for a beta test. So when I saw that there was a beta test for World of Warcraft, I was actually really excited to check it out, because I was actually was starting to get curious about MMOs back then, because I watched this little anime. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, called Dot Hack Sign, which is an anime about a kid who gets stuck in this MMO. Like, it's kind of like Sword Art Online nowadays, where you're basically like this person stuck in the MMO and they can't log out because it's like a virtual reality MMO, but like their consciousness has been transported into the game. And it's basically like a journey for the main character to like try and find his way out of the video game. There was like a bunch of Dot Hack video games from Bandai Namco that came out, but watching that show, that was kind of my first introduction to like what MMOs were as a concept. And then we had Final Fantasy 11 actually come out around the same time that we were getting like the English broadcast of Dot Hack. So that was my first MMO was Final Fantasy 11. But again, I was such a Warcraft fan that when I heard, Blizzard was doing a Warcraft MMO, I was like so excited to check it out. So I've actually been playing World of Warcraft since the beta of vanilla. It's going all the way back then. Like I basically been playing this game for more than 18 years. Like I think it's probably because I think I got into it in 2003. So I've basically been playing World of Warcraft since 2003. So 19 years. At this point, if you can believe it, and having a lot of fun along the way. Again, we'll talk more about like playtime and stuff like that later, because I love to ask y'all about that as well. But we've I know y'all have kind of hinted at like how when you guys sort of played it, but I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. So one of the things I gotta ask, and this kind of is tipped off a little bit to me. You guys, I asked you about races and classes that you played ahead of time. Were y'all Horde or Alliance? Seth, Horde or Alliance?
Horde.
And why? Why are they the
all
coolest?
Day. Yeah, it was I think it was just a decision that my friends and I made at that time, because it was like the more metal option, I guess. I think it was really just as simple as that. We just thought it was cool to be able to play as zombies and stuff. So we were all, most of us anyway, were undead. And even when I would go to make like other characters, like I just resonated with the Horde characters more, I feel like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was undead all day long. That was my main character for many years, was an undead rogue.
I mean, you just love the idea when you had the emote where you were like doing the air guitar with the undead, or
slash dance, yes.
Or like even if you played in some of the range classes like a warlock or something, you're like you've got like the devil horns and you're doing this like casting the spell and stuff like that, which is just funny. So they're
so cool.
Very metal, which again is just funny to think about, because Metal Lockleth over here might be our Alliance representative, I think, because you obviously mentioned you were a gnome, but were you really an Alliance person, or are you just a gnome person?
No, I played mainly Alliance. Gnome was my go-to. That was the actual Lockleth, was a warlock gnome.
Oh.
But I also made like a secondary character after a while, which was a night elf, and that's Alliance as well, and named her Analia, which was another name I came up with. It was actually one of my Animal Crossing island names.
Nice.
So that name has also followed me, but it hasn't been around for as long. But yeah, Alliance all the way. But I was dabbling in the Horde a bit, and so I did make like a blood elf at one point, just because they look so cool.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
Exactly. Plus they do the little spin in the air when they jump, and it's like you can't just say no to that. Like, they're pretty cool. They run around on giant ostriches too, which are just reminded me so much of chocobos from Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was totally
Sunstriders, they're called, I think, right? Yeah.
But as for me, I'm kind of a traitor in the sense that I kind of go between both sides. I really just go where my friends are whenever I'm playing. So like I was in guilds that were Alliance guilds, and I was in guilds where they were Horde guilds. So I didn't really have like an allegiance per se to one or the other, but my personal preference is actually with the Horde. I have to say, I'm sorry, Lockleth, but it's the Alliance races are very much just goody two shoe races.
Well, kind of my MO, so
yeah, good point.
Fair.
Although they did add like more metal races to the Alliance eventually, because we got the Worgen eventually. We also got what are referred to as allied races now in the game, which are like offshoots of races that already exist in the game, but like they're different based on where they originate from. So you've got like the Void Elves on the Alliance side, which are basically blood elves, but they have like, they're touched by the void, so they have like these like dark powers and stuff, which is kind of cool. Like I love their class fantasy, so it's like very different from a lot of the other Alliance races. And likewise, they did that with the Horde as well, where there are some, races that are more like on the lighter side of things as well, which is pretty interesting. But I'm going to bring in Kevin Ainsworth, the Muffin Mon, because I should have asked this question earlier, but I forgot to. Kevin asks, hello, friends. So I haven't played World of Warcraft since high school, but I wanted to know, why is Horde better than the Alliance, and why are the Tauren the best race? Kevin, come on. The Tauren are not the best race. Seth, you got to back me up. Are Tauren really the best Horde race? Because, I don't think so. Yeah.
No, I don't think. I do like them a lot, and I have played a Tauren. One thing that was really cool about the Tauren was they had that thunderclap racial trait or ability, which was cool. And it would be really good for like crowd control or drawing aggro if you were playing like a tank character, just to get that little bit of aggro. So it was they were just like the natural tank of the Horde races, and being able to roll paladin, which was really cool too, because that was something they did in vanilla. Now I think, like, don't they have it set up now to where any class can be any race can be any class?
No, they have certain classes that are set up that way, like rogue, warrior, priest, like any of the very like baseline classes are very much like that. But stuff like shaman or paladin or druid are very restrictive for race. Like druid, for example, on Horde you could only be Tauren for the longest time. So when I played druid, I was very sad about that, because I didn't really want to play as Tauren, because you didn't get any of the racial benefits by playing as Tauren if you were a healer. It's like, well, when am I going to use Thunderclap to do crowd control when I'm healing the party as a tree? Like, it doesn't make any sense at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to play as
I did used to love playing that whenever I did go for like a tankier build, but it took me a while to kind of come out of my comfort zone with that. So yeah, I wouldn't say the Tauren are the best, but I do like them. I will give it to them. And then of course that was that band, that like Elite Tauren Chieftain band or whatever.
That's exactly it. Yeah. The Blizzard band, the World of Warcraft band. Oh, they're so good. But I would say Tauren are okay. They're not the worst, but they're definitely not the best. Like I don't know what the worst race in World of Warcraft is, if I'm being honest. I think goblins might be the worst. Yeah, humans are kind of boring too.
They're just dull. Like, why would you play as something you already are?
Yeah. And then get this, Lockleth. They not only have humans, but then they added a different style of humans with the allied races called the Kultiran humans, and they're basically just fat humans. So they're basically the same as the humans before, but they're just fatter. That's kind of their thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing that really kind of attracts me to the Horde versus the Alliance is like the areas and the hub cities and things are so much more like I guess stylized and cool looking. Like the Undercity is like such a great like kind of hub, and even and I do like things like Ironforge and Stormwind and stuff on the Alliance side, but like nothing beats like just that kind of like Tim Burton looking Undercity. It's so cool. Yeah. Like I always was drawn to that.
Well, especially if you played Warcraft 3 as well, because then you can go into like the throne room, and they perfectly recreated it from that cinematic and stuff.
The Warcraft 3 cutscene with Arthas and
you've got the bell that got knocked down. It's dude, it's so cool. Like that.
So cool.
That was one of the things I nerded out so much. Playing vanilla originally was going to all the locations that I remembered playing in Warcraft 3 in the game, and it was just so cool that all of them were just recreated. Like even just some of the regular levels in the middle, like Black Rock and Roll and stuff like that, like where some took place in like the Eastern Plaguelands the way it is now, or even going to like the Blood Elf starting area and going to Quel'Thalas, the Elven city, and then seeing like the Dead Scar from when Arthas raided the city, just still there, like it's covered in zombies and stuff like that. I'm like, man,
so cool.
I'm such a dork. It's so cool.
I'm on the side of, I played the Alliance too, because that world was not scary.
That's
like
fair.
I was a baby, even more so back in the day. And so if the area was just too scary for me, like I couldn't even watch scary films back then. Then I just couldn't, I knew I couldn't play it. And I really liked the Night Elf, like where you started, like in that area. It was really pretty too. So that's kind of why I think I also leaned more Alliance, was it wasn't intimidating. to me.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And yeah, the Alliance actually has like a lot of really pretty areas as well. Again, like I think, you know, the island of Darnassus where the Night Elves start, to your point, is actually really nice. Or even I like the Draenei starting area as well. I think it looks really cool. And then, you know, Stormwind's like a real, like definitely, I think Stormwind's the better of the two cities to navigate. Cause like sometimes it's just very annoying to find stuff in Orgrimmar, especially nowadays. Cause there's like a bajillion things in Orgrimmar now. Cause it's kind of like the main hub city for Horde. Like there's not as much stuff in the other Horde cities. Like there's no reason ever to go back to Thunderbluff, but even then, like Thunderbluff is also really annoying to navigate as well.
It's annoying, yeah. It's all connected with bridges and various levels and things. Yeah.
I mean, it's a very cool, you know, race kind of fantasy. Like it makes sense for the Tauren to live in that cool city. But man, it's just so annoying to walk around that city and do stuff. Like if you ever have to go there, it's like, well, all right, here we are again. We got to go do this again. Which is pretty cool. But also, you know, speaking of Night Elves, Lockleth, actually, that was my very first character, was actually a Night Elf Druid back in the day. Back in vanilla, I was like, man, Druids were really cool in D&D, and I kind of want to play a game where I play as a Druid, because I've never played a Druid class in a video game before. So I wanted to do that. And Night Elves were cool. I like Night Elves a lot in Warcraft 3, which is one of the reasons why I actually wanted to play as a Night Elf in the game. Because although Undead was my favorite race in Warcraft 3, but I didn't really love the undead perks that you really got in World of Warcraft, so that's why I went with, you know, Night Elf to start the game with. But
yeah, my brother always played as undead, so I remember seeing that character always hunched over, running around, looking all creepy in the tattered clothing.
Exactly. All right, so what I wanted to do now that we've, you know, talked about how we got our start and whatnot, I want to talk about, you know, some of our favorite memories or, you know, things that, you know, happened along the way. So first off, you know, of the memory segment here, I want to ask, you know, do you all have like a favorite memory from the being inside the game itself, not connected to, you know, making friends outside the game? We'll get into that later. But do you have a favorite thing that you did in the game? And while I give you guys some time to think about this, one of my favorite moments actually from playing the game was like this giant streak that we tried to go on. We tried forever and ever and ever. And Seth, I think you'll appreciate this a little bit, but like in Wrath of the Lich King, towards the end of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, we finally got Ice Crown Citadel, the raid location where we finally got to fight the Lich King and have this huge epic battle. And the raid itself was epic because there was like 13 bosses in there. So good. And like some of the way that you could, of course, approach the bosses on the second level was totally up to you how you wanted to approach them. Like if you wanted to go do like the Frost Quarter first with Sindragosa, or if you wanted to go do the Plague Quarter first, and you had like your raid could kind of determine how you wanted to go approach that. But you know, the epic battle between the Lich King and our party was so epic, and I loved it. But of course, I remember for months and months, like we beat normal Lich King pretty easily, but beating heroic Lich King on 25 man was an epic feat of epic proportions. It was so ridiculous. Like that boss fight in particular, what is one of the most ridiculous boss fights I've played in the video game, because there are so many individual things that can go wrong, and if one thing goes wrong, then everything falls apart like a house of cards, and you're basically just like, well, all right, I guess we're just doing this over again. Everyone just jump off the cliff so we can just reset this.
Wipe.
Unalive yourself real quick.
Yeah. But I remember it being really special finally, you know, after like the 70 or 80th try, us finally getting down the Lich King on 25 man heroic and getting like the Light of Dawn title, and it being like a really special moment for our guild, because I actually, you know, started my own guild. We were called Oh No, just like, you know, the Family Guy says oh no. It was my cousin's idea, okay? It's really dumb. And we had a bunch of our friends both in real life, but also, you know, friends that, you know, I'll probably talk about in a little bit when we get to that segment. And we just had like it was just like a really special moment for that we all came together and experienced together, and there just wasn't, you know, moments like that in other video games, like even just multiplayer games, because you had like epic multiplayer moments with some co-op games at the time, but nothing felt like it did to take down like a big end of expansion raid boss in the same way that it did in World of Warcraft. So I remember that being like a huge moment for us. But before I talk about some more stuff, I want to go to you guys. So Lockleth, do you have like a favorite moment of playing World of Warcraft just in general, like from the game?
Yeah, like outside of like, you know, the friends you make or whatever. And I've got a stories with that, obviously. But the thing I was thinking of when you were going on with yours was it was very simple, but I remember we're getting really excited about it. So my night elf was a hunter,
Mhm.
and so just being able to tame, I think it was like a tiger, um, was like one of my favorite things, like with being that, being a huntress, I guess, and finally winning and getting the tiger that would just follow me around and do things with me. And the same with
So
like
cool.
the gnome warlock, like the little imps that you
Yeah.
would have.
Yeah.
Loved that. I like having like a little side character, like in any game. That's just how I am. I like it, whether it be cute or cool looking. That's like some of my favorite things is having this little side character that just follows you around and stuff.
Mhm.
So those are some of my favorite memories that I can think of right now. It's
Yeah.
been so long since I've played. But yeah, specifically the animals that like would help me fight, like against a hog or something. Those were some of my favorites. Plus the first little imp you get as a warlock. It's just so ugly. It's cute in a way.
Mhm.
It sounds like nasty, but it would follow you around and it would help you. And it was like, me. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just always put a smile on my face. That little guy did.
Yeah, because back then you actually had to go on specific quests to get, a specific demon for your warlock. Or likewise,
Yeah.
you also had the mount quests back then as well. So you had
Hmm.
like the warlock mount quest where you get like the horse that was on fire. Or you also had like the paladin one where you got like the really fancy horse. If you wanted to go with the fancy horse of flight, I guess, if you're a goody two shoes paladin. I mean,
In
of
my
course, I wouldn't know
day.
anything about that. The guy who was wearing a paladin hoodie from World of Warcraft. No, of course not. I would know nothing about that. But Seth, what about you? I'm curious.
A lot of mine, similar to you, a lot of my favorite sort of in-game memories are tied to like raids and instances. And, um, the first raid that I really was like, wow, like this is awesome was Nax Ramus.
Mhm.
I was like, man, this is so cool. Just like the multi sort of tiered setup, the huge amount of bosses, the vibes of it. Again, it's got that sort of Lich Undercity Tim Burton vibes. It's like it's got that whole like setup to it. The boss fights are so cool. The various quarters of Naxxramas are cool. And I just remember pouring through some of these raids with my group, like you, Ryan. In Burning Crusade, I started my own guild as well. Um, the server we played on was Khadgar, and uh, we were at one time in kind of the middle of the Burning Crusade era. We were one of the biggest guilds on the server, or the realm rather. And I managed to, before anybody else took it, after Burning Crusade came out and they introduced the song Lament of the Highborn with Sylvanas,
Mhm.
I managed to get in before anybody else stole the Lament of the Highborn name for the guild. So, created that guild and ran it for many years. So we were Lament of the Highborn, and it was just so like, yeah, it was just really special. I remember doing like dumb stuff, like we would set up outside of Scarlet Monastery and just like help people run through Scarlet Monastery. Even those like early game instances, like those just those kind of like earlier ones were really cool. Yeah, little stuff. Getting your first mount back then, it was like a feat to
Mhm.
get a mount. It was like even just getting to the point where you had gold in your pocket versus silver and copper
Mhm.
back then was like a big thing. And uh yeah, that was really, those are special times, man.
Yeah, it did eventually got to the point, where people had so much gold that, we would play games in our guild chat where we would just, bet like thousands and thousands of gold and just do like random dice rolls in the game and just
Yeah.
see who would just win like this giant pot of gold. And we would just do that when we were, when there was just downtime during the raids. Or I don't know if you remember during the Burning Crusade era, but one of the popular things to do while you're waiting for, the next boss fight or something like that was to play Peggle. Well,
Oh
like
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
game as well. I remember just so many times just going on this crazy run in Peggle, and everyone in voice chat's like, why are you screaming at your computer? I'm like, oh, I'm on a sick Peggle run, you guys. I
Dude,
can't
yeah,
help it.
that's voice
How about a
chat, dude.
streak?
Ventrilo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we were all in Ventrilo back then. It was
Oh
before
man.
Discord was a thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, those are the good old days, man. We used to do, there was, I don't remember what the command is, but there was a way that you could type in like custom commands, like to where it would look like a like a server side message or something. Like it would be displayed in orange, like the server side messages, and so we would pretend like we were, uh, some of my friends and I would pretend like we were like server masters, like Blizzard employees or whatever.
No.
And troll people and like put in like the messages like we're hacking your account, or whatever, disabling your account, just trolling people. Yeah, we were terrible.
Way to go. Oh my God. That's
We
awful.
were terrible people.
I don't know if we can condone that kind of behavior on this show, Seth.
I was
Wow.
young. We were babies.
Wow. How dare.
Those poor kids on the other side of their computers,
Mhm.
thinking that a Blizzard master is, taking advantage of them. But really, it was just.
And they would have like the brackets above their name, like GM, whatever. And we would go. I don't remember what the command was, but there was a way you could make the command look like a server side command, and we made them think that they were deleting their accounts and stuff. It was pretty good.
Rolling. My God.
Yeah. So, before we go into the next section, I want to bring in Lee Navarro in here from the Discord, who actually has like a really good, World of Warcraft memory of playing the game itself. And of course, I have to adjust my computers because I've got multiple computers in front of me, folks. Okay. I need to be able to read this. So Lee Navarro says, favorite WoW memory, seeing Hyjal for the very first time and witnessing the history of the game. The raid was so epic in many, many ways. As far as 25-man raids go, that is, Black Temple or Nax 25 in Wrath.
Yeah.
That rank in my top 3. That's pretty awesome because especially like I remember the Hyjal raid. I remember that raid was like a bit of a pain to go through, but it also, like, to Lee's point, as someone who played Warcraft 3, getting to see that battle play out, like the final battle from Warcraft 3 play out in like a raid in World of Warcraft that you can fully explore was just so cool. Like such a great idea for them to do that. And then they eventually tried it years later with some other raids down the line, but I loved just the originality of it, and it was just such a cool idea for a raid. So hats off, Lee Navarro, for pointing that out as well. And Nax, you brought it up already. One of the strongest
cool
raids in Wrath as well, which then kind of leads me to another question that we got from the chat. This is from Awesome Dave 1337, who asks, as someone who has fallen back in love with WoW due to the release of Classic, what are each of your favorite expansions that have been released? As for me, nothing beats Wrath of the Lich King. So, I mean, I know y'all, both you and Lockleth and Seth, you probably have like limited expansions kind of to work with here. But I'm still going to ask the question anyway. So Lockleth, what, was it Classic? Was it Burning Crusade? Or was it neither? What do you think? What was your favorite expansion for World of Warcraft? I guess it probably would be Burning Crusade for you, right?
Yeah. That was the one I remember when it was like announced, and like my brother getting all excited, us getting very excited for it, and like asking it for Christmas, being able to get it. Like that was just the hype around that one. I remember pretty vividly that we were super excited for it, and we were just ready to get into it,
Well, clearly it was because you were not prepared. That was the whole thing. You weren't
You
prepared.
are not prepared. Yes.
And that of
So
course,
good.
after that cinematic, just became Illidan's thing. That's what he says all the time now, for some reason. But Seth, what about
just catchphrase?
What about you?
It's Burning Crusade is very special to me, and another thing that I think a lot of people sort of forget about is in what was one of the most brilliant marketing tactics of all time. The South Park episode "Make Love Not Warcraft" got so many people into that game. I remember just the explosion of new players when Burning Crusade came out, and just like it was like that was what really took it to the next level. And I think people undersell. There must have been so many new subs just because of that episode of South Park, and it's one of the all-time great episodes of South Park.
Between that, it
Free
was
the
that,
Chester.
or the Mr. T commercials. You remember the Mr. T commercials? I'm
With
a
the
Night Elf
grenades,
Mohawk.
the holy hand grenade.
Yeah, that was a big. I remember that was a moment where a lot of people jumped into because they were like, "Oh, I want to be like Mr. T," because then they had the promotion
Right.
where you could then get the grenades to throw at people to turn them into Night Elf Mohawks, which was just
So good.
which was great as well.
It's just that's phenomenal, dude. Like that's just the best. And for me though, I think Wrath is probably my favorite as well. Just like it's so hard. I do go back and forth between Burning Crusade and Wrath, because Burning Crusade had like there's a cool vibe when you're walking through the dark portal, and it really is this new land that everybody is sort of like colonizing together, and Shatrith was such a cool like new hub, and it was this sort of like neutral ground, and I just loved the way it was all laid out and everything, and that was a really like precious time. But Wrath for me is when I really like kind of, you know, came into my own, I felt like, with the game, and I was at that point kind of a seasoned guild leader, and we were doing all this exciting new stuff together. And yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, I spent so much time just, there's a polar bear mount that you could get as a rare drop from an instance, or no, sorry, from a daily, that we were all obsessed with. Like, it's little stuff like that. Like, I felt like that's when the guild really kind of became the guild, was in Wrath. So I think Wrath is my favorite.
There was also, like, with Wrath, there were a ton of like new quality of life improvements to the game and other things that just made the game just more enjoyable to play. Because, you know, one of the things that we learned very quickly with, you know, WoW Classic is that, you know, going back to original WoW, just vanilla WoW, sometimes it just took forever to do anything in that game.
Right.
Let alone like especially like trying to find dungeons and, you know, sitting in trade chat and hoping to find, you know, 5 other people to do the dungeons with and stuff like that. Like, Wrath brought in a lot of elements that allowed you to play with other players a lot quicker. So I found, like, as a solo player even, or someone who, even if someone joined that wasn't, you know, in like a guild, but wanted, you know, people to play with and stuff like that, I just found it was easier to play with people in Wrath, which is why I'm also holding up the Wrath, you know, vinyl poster here, because honestly, this is actually my favorite expansion as WoW. In WoW is Wrath of the Lich King, not just because of the things that I just mentioned, because of the ease of use and stuff like that, but also just because, like, as such a Warcraft 3 fan, I was really like into Arthas's story, and I love him as a character, and having him be like this omnipresent threat throughout the story, but then also getting, you know, fight Kel'Thuzad and Narmaxis, as well as some of the other allies of Arthas throughout, you know, Wrath of the Lich King. I just really was connected with the story in Wrath of the Lich King, combined with just the instances I thought were great. Like, I felt like that's where we hit kind of the peak as far as, you know, raid content, or even, you know, some of the dungeons and instance content for the game. And just exploring Northrend was really fun too. And to your point about the polar bear mount, there was also lots of interesting stuff that was like that in Wrath of the Lich King, like lots of different mounts to get, or lots of pets to collect. And it was just a really fun time playing Wrath of the Lich King. But my runner-up actually is probably one of the more modern expansions, and that's Legion. Which came out, you know, a couple expansions ago. That was when the Burning Legion returned, and it brought in, you know, demon hunters into the game. But what I liked about it, which was refreshing versus the other World of Warcraft expansions, was that it basically focused on the different classes of World of Warcraft rather than the Alliance versus the Horde. Because basically, you know, everyone's got to kind of band together against the Burning Legion, but the Horde and the Alliance are trying to murder each other. So, like, all the paladins had this like order hall you would go to, and you hang out with other paladins, and you would group up with the other paladins to then, you know, take down the Burning Legion or whatever class you decided to play as in the game. Like, each had their own unique hub to go to. You also had every character getting a legendary weapon depending on your specialization, and then each of the weapons had their own backstory and mission associated with it, and you got a lot of lore just on the weapons themselves, which was pretty cool. And it just, again, it was another strong expansion for like the different, you know, instance content, like the raids, the dungeons. Even the PvP content was pretty good in Legion. So I think like it was also like a really strong expansion, and definitely like the best modern expansion for World of Warcraft, I think, because like it all went down the hill from there with Battle for Azeroth, and then we got Shadowlands. We just came off that, and they were okay. They're just not nearly as good as Legion or anything really that came before it. So yeah.
I think Legion was the last one that because what would happen was after Cataclysm, and shout outs to Cataclysm, by the way, I feel like Cataclysm is an underrated expansion. I really liked how Cataclysm like changed what was already there versus adding a ton of new landmass. Of course, it added the underwater stuff, which I also thought was really cool.
Yeah.
But like changing kind of what was there, and it really did feel like a cataclysm. Like it felt like the world was like just I can't say that word. Irreversibly, I guess, changed from that point onward. It was just a very cool vibe, and that was the last expansion that I was there like day one. But with Mists of Pandaria and Legion and stuff, like I would dip my toe in. I would come back in, reactivate my account for that like month or something, and then I would dip back out just to kind of just see, you know. But
Yeah, Cataclysm was really good too. Like that was one where I played a lot. I played a lot of Cataclysm, and to your point, I loved what they did with the old zones and then the new zones. Because like even going to Mount Highjaw, I thought was a cool zone too as well to go to, and especially because it was cool. It was like made for flying mounts, which of course you had because they introduced flying to like the original zones, which was really cool. Like it was also cool even to be able to fly over Orgrimmar or Starwind for the first time and like sit on top of the buildings or go to like the top of the Mage Tower and just hang out up there and see all the scenery that way.
And was Cataclysm the first expansion that introduced like the kind of like cutscenes, like the in-game cutscenes? Was that the first one that did that? Where you would do like missions, and even like standard quests would have like these little cutscenes sometimes, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, there was actually like a really good quest, to your point, it called how the Cataclysm happened, and it was in the Badlands, and you had this orc and this goblin and this other person. They all told their story about what they did during the Cataclysm, and each one was like got progressively more ridiculous as it went on, like to the point where you're getting the orc story. He's like, I rode on this motorcycle and I was all badass, and he's just like doing like very silly stuff in the cutscene and stuff. It's actually like a really funny quest line that's just randomly there in the world, and most people might even just skip over it because you might not level even in that zone if you didn't want to, because there was a lot of freedom to kind of level where you wanted to in the Cataclysm expansion. So it's just funny. They added like all kinds of quests like that, or they even added like a Plants vs Zombies quest line where you actually played Plants vs Zombies in the game with like the undead ghouls kind of walking towards you being the zombies, and then like some like trees and plants from the open world were like your plants that you'd put on there. It was really interesting.
So fun. Cool. I love that.
Yeah. And Lockleth, of course, is just like, what did they do to my game? Did we even play the same game here? What's going on here?
It did change a lot, man.
There's a lot that y'all are talking about, but when you were talking about like the flying to places, like those were cutscenes, right? Like you would kind of see like the world, but you would be on the mount that's like the eagle with the wings that would be flying the griffin.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Like those were also like cutscenes in a way
Taking
too.
flight paths.
Yeah. Okay. Because I picture that in my head when you were talking about it. I was like, I think I remember those, like like you said, being able to see like Stormwind a bit as you're like flying in or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember those. But Plants vs Zombies, who knew that would be a crossover? Are they trying to be like, are they the early Fortnite? Is that what's happening?
Kinda.
In a lot of ways, they did lots of stuff like that. Like that's not the only thing that the crossover thing that they did like that. They did a whole bunch. They have one of those type of quests, for example, that's like a mini game from a different video game in almost every expansion, actually. So, which is interesting. So they're actually really cool to find.
You can play like Pokemon in WoW, essentially.
You can now. Yeah, because you've got pet battles. So you get all the pets that you collected over the years. You can then use them in like Pokemon battles to then, catch, the pets in the open world. And then you get to, carry them around. Like you're like, man, I really like that squirrel over there. I want to, catch him like with my Pokeball and then keep them, which is pretty cool.
Why am I not playing this now? Because that sounds wonderful.
I know. I know some people that actually just that subscribe to World of Warcraft just for the pet, just for the pet stuff, because like the pet, recruitment and end game. Because there's also like you actually fight like an equivalent of the Elite Four in like the pet quest line, because there's a pet quest line that you go on as you level your pets up, just like in Pokemon, which is just funny. So. There you go. But anyways, I want to also talk about, because I hinted at this a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about, the relationships and friends kind of we made along the way. Because first of all, I need to know, am I the only one who actually had multiple relationships, exist because of World of Warcraft? Am I the only one that's like that? Oh, you did, Seth? Mm-hmm. Oh, tell me about it.
Time.
Do you have stories?
I definitely had I had IRL friends that I played with and stuff, but I made many friends that people that I still have like on on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot today that I met because of World of Warcraft, especially in that guild. And there is kind of like And you probably know what I mean when I say this, Ryan. When you're the guild leader, you sort of just become everybody's friend. Like you get like invested in people, and you, especially when you're in those like those late night vent chats, and then just like that's when the real conversations come out, and you really get to know people, and especially with some of the instances of stuff, like if you're just grinding together or whatever, it's almost like a road trip where like you're together and you're just doing this brain dead activity. And for some reason that just creates this safe place to just like chat and get to know each other as people. So yeah, I made many friends, and a good friend of mine, her name is Michelle. I met her on MSN Messenger many years ago. I've known her for like 20 years. And she still plays WoW. That's like the only video game she plays is World of Warcraft, and has been since Burning Crusade. So yeah, and that was a huge part of like our friendship, was playing WoW together, and yeah, it strengthened my relationship even with like my cousin. My cousin and I played a whole lot of WoW together, and yeah, definitely. It's a great, and even like my dad, my dad played WoW for a little bit. He never got very hardcore into it. My mom wouldn't allow it, but he, he played a good amount of WoW, and that was kind of a bonding moment for us as we'd play WoW together. So yeah, it's a ton of IRL, and online relationships kind of either formed or strengthened due to this game, for sure.
Also, Sean compares it to sounds like starting a podcast group. It is kind of like that in a lot of ways, but more expanded. Where again, it almost felt like hopping onto the Discord, that like the feeling that I have hopping onto the Carpool Discord now, where like hopping onto Ventrilo is just as normal as me hopping onto Sean's Saturday Night Fun kind of voice chat, where you mostly just chill and play games together. Like that was very much the thing with World of Warcraft for me. But Lockleth, I got to go to you. I need to know, did you make any friends or get to know anyone from World of Warcraft in particular?
So, as a woman, I might have a different experience.
It's different.
Yeah,
it's way different.
Yeah.
I tried to make friends, but everyone wants more than friendship, especially when they find out that I'm actually a girl that's playing this game.
Yeah.
I never did voice chat though, because, that just, my parents were like, safety, They didn't mind that I was playing it, but for safety purposes, I never actually spoke to anyone. So I could have not been an actual girl, but they, I guess, took the risk, and I obviously benefited from it. I have no shame in it. I had a lot of gold. I was high up in the guild, even though I did nothing. I got proposed to a few times, even though I was a teenager.
Good God.
I have similar stories with RuneScape as well. I got proposed to many times on that game. So my relationships were a little different than possibly y'all's.
I totally understand. I mean, yeah, because I know that, like, I know lots of girls who, I met because of World of Warcraft, because, I wasn't super creepy. So it actually just kind of worked out that, it was okay for us to be friends and play together. But it was definitely something I heard from them a lot. Like I definitely can like fully understand why it would be a little bit tougher to kind of, want to reach out to just random people on the internet, especially playing that game, because a lot of them are kind of immature in the way you talked about, where they're like, oh yeah, I know you in the game for a couple of weeks. I want to marry you. I think that'd sound just lovely. And just like, no.
Yeah. And I have no idea how old these people are either on the other end. Like, I remember vividly this person, their user handle was NewFed, and it somehow has stuck with me, but he was one of the longer like friends I had. But yeah, it was quite different.
Yeah.
I was just out here just having fun, getting free stuff. That was fun. Why not? It was fun. Yeah. Getting free stuff.
Well, you got to take advantage of it a little bit. Just like, I have to ask you this, Lockleth, because I have stories about this as well. Did you ever contemplate the idea of playing as a male character instead, so people wouldn't bug you as much?
No. I always pick the female character because I always like the female character's looks more than the males.
Yeah.
They're way better.
I think the only time I've ever picked an opposite, gender, or just like maybe not even like gender neutral, was The Sims. But in other games where you had to pick one or the other, I always picked the female. And like, at the end of the day, I'm getting free stuff, Ryan. Like, why would I?
Oh, trust me, I know all about it as someone who only plays as female characters. I know all
usually do
about
too.
that. Because you better believe when you walk into Stormwind and people and dudes walk up to you and they're like, "Man, you're a really nice looking character here." And I'm like, "Yeah, you want to know more? Can I have some free stuff?" And then they'd give me free stuff. So trust me, I know that hustle. I know the hustle of getting the free stuff in game because you play as a female character. But it's just one of those things where whenever I play a video game and there's a creative character option, I always play as the female character. That's just always my thing, because in most games, especially, early, games that were coming out in the early 2000s or late 2000s, even, most of them you play as guys as the main character. So I always wanted to play, I always like to play from the female perspective a little bit. And it wasn't just about free stuff. I like you, Lockleth, also really prefer the female character models in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
They look way cooler, especially if
Agreed.
you're, like any of the spellcasting characters and stuff. Like, come on, like the dude blood elves wearing robes and stuff, they look weird, but the female blood elves, they look really cool. They feel like they fit.
Ryan, you're also staring at this character's butt the whole time too, and
That's
they
what
got back.
That's what everyone says.
You're not wrong.
That's everybody's excuse.
You're not wrong about that. Yeah, and I mean, I have other reasons as to why I do that I won't go into here. Maybe that's a you make a pre-podcast topic that we talk about another time. But yeah, it's always really interesting to kind of see it from that perspective. But as for me, I made a lot of friends also, just like Seth from World of Warcraft. Not so many of them that I'm still friends with now and then, because it's just one of those things where over 10 years. People change and our lives change and stuff like that. So you tend to fall out of, favor with your friends. And funnily enough, I'm glad that you're talking about your cousin like that, Seth, because also the same thing happened with my cousin. My cousin Andrew and I became super close. I mean, he was already spending most weekends at my house anyways, as I kind of alluded to when talking about us playing, Warcraft 3 together. But him and I became like best friends because of World of Warcraft, where they spent like so much time together. We would be spending 8 hours a day hanging out with each other, let alone everyone else we played with. So I definitely felt much closer to him than like any of my other family members, besides of course my two brothers. So it was really interesting kind of getting to know him that way. And now I barely talk to him because he moved to China. So it's like, it's very hard to, communicate with him where he is now. But yeah, we used to spend so much time playing World of Warcraft together. Although I do feel bad for him a little bit, because he really fell down the rabbit hole with World of Warcraft in kind of a dangerous way, where it was really started affecting like its outside life and stuff like that. So he kind of had to quit the game kind of cold turkey to kind of get himself back on track. So those are kind of the dangerous things you walk into, playing a game like this. But it's all about balance. As long as you kind of make sure to balance out your life, you'll be okay. But then I, made lots of long life friends as well. Like, I also had multiple relationships with women that, spurred from World of Warcraft, including probably the most serious relationship I've been with a girl in my entire life. We dated for 5 years, and we played like World of Warcraft together for like 12 hours a day, almost every day. And it was a good time. Yeah, it was just, it's funny how it just, spurred out of, talking in Ventrilo chat, and then us going to like the private channels to talk, and then one thing led to another, and well, there we were, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's how it happens. It's interesting too, because I think a lot of people reduce time spent with people in a video game or in digital space or whatever as like not valid. But like, to your point, Ryan, like, it's like, yeah, I spent like 8 hours a day every day with my cousin, and we became very close. Like, that's still real time. Like, that's real bonding experiences. You guys did that together. It's shared experience in a video game, but it's still shared experience, and it's just as valid. Yeah.
Well, especially too, because it's not just over text chat. Like, we're on voice chat together, or we're on video chat together. Eventually, when Skype worked and was a thing that people were using. So, and then eventually, we met in real life, and then we totally hit it off, and that was the thing. But yeah, with like everyone else I ran into as well, like that was the game that really taught me that lesson that, I kind of scoffed at the idea that, people that you met in video games, that wasn't like real time you were kind of spending together. But World of Warcraft was kind of the game that really changed my mind on that, where now, I really feel like, the time we spend together, talking even in the Discord voice chat, I feel like is just as, just as important or just as real as like us hanging out in person together. Maybe not as real as that, I guess, but pretty close to the
They're
real
different.
things.
They're different, but it's still real and it's still valid. It's still developing those bonds and those friendships, man. It's important.
Yeah. So my last question kind of before we go to, listener questions and stuff like that is I wanted to ask y'all. So do you guys remember when you stopped playing or when you kind of fell off of it? And also if there's something down the line that you think would ever bring you back to the game or make you want to try it again. I'm going to start with you, Lockleth, because, I think you definitely stopped playing the earliest between all of us. What would make you ever want to try the game again?
Probably time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because it is very involved, and I would essentially be starting over because cannot remember what those login credentials are anymore. So yeah, it would just be, do I have the time? Is there maybe a lull in the amount of games that are being released that I'm not interested in or whatever? Where I could go into it, because I know I would still enjoy it, because I did play Elder Scrolls on PlayStation when it came out, and I put a lot, over 200 hours in that game.
Jesus.
Yeah. I've got several, even more so, Elder Scrolls books and things, and I actually chatted with actual people because I was old enough. I was an adult when I played that one, so the experience was different. I still had the men trying to throw things at me, which valid, I'll accept. But I played that a lot more, so I still enjoy and miss those types of games and getting back into those. I did stop playing it really just because my brother went off to college and he was 2 years ahead of me in school. So I really only played it for a full 2 years. And then he went off to school and my parents stopped paying for the service. And so I essentially just stopped playing it and just played soccer and was into actual IRL boys at the time, and life moves on.
Going outside. How dare you?
Going outside, touching grass, playing in the grass, actually, Ryan. Playing sports, getting bruised up.
That's awful.
Defending goals.
Good God. Well, how about you, Seth? What do you think?
Yeah, for me, it was, so like I said, I sort of dipped my toes into various expansions. I think the last one I actually played was Legion. The last one I put a lot of time into was Cataclysm. And there was a couple of things that made me bounce off the game. And not to get too into the weeds on mechanical stuff, but I really disliked the change to the old talent tree system. I really disliked that. And they fundamentally, like I said, my main was a rogue, and specifically I played a subtlety rogue. And subtlety rogue before that change happened was very, very different than it is now. Now it's a completely different vibe, and if you do anything other than really, I felt like I was forced to shift to combat rogue, and I didn't like that. So anyway, that kind of made me bounce off of it, and I told myself, if they ever did do a WoW Classic sort of thing, I would go back. And then they did WoW Classic, and I did go back for a couple of months, and I got that kind of nostalgia hit, and then I realized, to Lockleth's point, I don't have space for an MMO anymore. I don't really have the time in I play too many games now to fit a to fit an MMO into it. But I do miss it. There is a part of me that misses that. So
that makes sense. And yeah, actually, to your point, that's one of the things that I don't love about, the DPS design in general, with the classes that are specifically just DPS only, where they have, 3 different specializations, but you're usually forced or funneled into one. So it's not really a choice. And sometimes it's the one that you don't like to play as. Sometimes I don't want to play as a frost or a fire mage, but that just happens to be the best mage class. So I guess I'm stuck playing this now.
I liked playing with my little builds and going down different trees and having the, I really liked that. I missed that,
Yeah. Well, they did, with Dragonflight, they did bring back the talent trees. So they actually are not the exact same as before. You basically have a talent tree for your class and then a talent tree for your spec. So all 3 of the specs have the same talent tree for your class, but then you'll have a talent tree for each spec on its own, which is interesting.
That's interesting.
And I actually like the new system a lot because there's a lot of flexibility there, a lot of customization. So I actually think they're back on the right track with a lot of that stuff. And I feel like there's going to be a lot more variety. Whereas like, because now I'm now getting ready for Dragonflight. I'm playing as my Demon Hunter now because that was the class I decided on during my live stream that happened a couple days ago. And I've really liked the new build that I kind of put together with it, where now I'm like, it's all about, gaining life back as I'm dealing damage. And it's more about that is like my form of mitigation versus, dumping a bunch of talent points into, increasing my parry chance and stuff like that. So I like the direction they're going in with that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, like you guys, the way I kind of manage it, because as y'all know, I might play a few games outside of just MMOs, just every once in a while. But the way I kind of balance an MMO into that lifestyle is I really don't play it all the time. It's mostly, I like playing MMOs as my downtime game or my game when I need a break from, playing, the newest release and stuff like that. Or if I just need a good podcast game. Like MMOs are usually what kind of fills that void for me. And a lot of times nowadays that is mostly Final Fantasy 14. But I always do come back for every new WoW expansion. I have been ever since the Burning Crusade came out. I played every WoW expansion and I always play through at least the campaign and get to max level. And then from there, it's just, judging whether or not I want to go through, the time commitment it takes to then to grind dailies and, get raid ready and stuff like that. Like I kind of determine from there whether I want to do that. And sometimes I bounce off from there and I come back later in the expansion to then when some of the contents come out already, and then I go back and play some of the older content and stuff like that. Like that's usually how I consume things. So, but like my tip to success with MMOs, or specifically World of Warcraft, is I just don't play it all the time. I always play it for a little bit, make sure I maybe grab like the 3-month subscription, grab that, play for 3 months, and then just decide, okay, I'll put it down for a while and come back in a year or 6 months or however long I feel it needs to take before I'm ready to kind of come back to the game. But
I don't have that willpower.
Yeah.
If
fair.
I'm playing it, I'm playing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not touching it. Because the other thing with MMOs for me, and why I haven't gotten back into Elder Scrolls, because I still have that game and could still play it, is I forgot everything. I forgot where my house is. I don't know where I'm at in the story. I don't know anything anymore with the game, and I didn't think at the time to write notes down as to where I left off. But if I did get into it and tried to play it more casually, like it sounds like you do, Ryan, I would have to, probably like I do with Stardew Valley, I would have to take notes, like what I did, where I left off, so that if I picked it up again, I would know what to do. Because like my mind is like a pigeon. I can't remember. I can't remember anything. So yeah. And I don't have willpower. I will go either all in or not at all.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and like I know the game is better now about telling you where you are, or whatever requests you were on and stuff like that. Like I think there's a lot of quality of life improvements that they put into the game that makes it easier to pick up again. But you're right. Like I can understand from that perspective wanting to either be all in with it or just not want to jump into it at all. But whereas I'm just like, oh, just willy-nilly. I don't mind playing that casually, but I'll play a lot of games casually like that. Like that, World of Warcraft's not the only game that fits into that bubble. Whether it's Final Fantasy 14 or a random real-time strategy game, or just deciding to play like an entire afternoon of The Sims. Like I have lots of games that I kind of bounce off that kind of fill that void a little bit. So it's not always that game, but yeah, that's pretty cool. But anyways, kind of to round things out, we asked the community what they thought or if they had specific questions about the game. And we actually only had one other additional question beyond the kind of memories that we talked about there. So I want to tackle this one. And since I'm the one I think who's playing right now, I think I'll be the one who tackles this. But feel free to jump in if either of you guys want to jump in on this one. This comes to us from Skycatcher Gaming on the Discordia, who asks, WoW seems so cool, but also very intimidating. How would you recommend getting started if you are a newbie to the game? So for someone who's new to the game, first of all, I actually wouldn't start with WoW Classic, because I do think, as much as WoW Classic really hooked us, back when it was new, the game design from WoW Classic is a little bit outdated, and it's definitely harder to get into for brand new players. So I definitely wouldn't start with WoW Classic. I would say just install World of Warcraft. It's free up to level 20, which again is not like a huge amount of time because you can actually get to level 20 very quickly nowadays, like probably an hour or two at this point. But it'll give you a good handle on whether or not you like the style of game that World of Warcraft is, because it gives you a good sense of like what some of your core abilities are for the different classes, and allows you to also try out a bunch of different things before you then plunk down money for the subscription or plunk down money for the game and the expansion itself. So I like that they offer that as like a bit of a demo for the game. So I would say that that's probably the best way to start, is just try it out and see if it's really for you. Because again, like in the first, hour or so with the game, I think you'll know whether or not, this is the type of game that's for you or not. But I don't know if you guys had anything to say about that. I personally would just say that's probably the best way to go. But
I think so. I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I think you're right too. But I think just based on my experience, if you want some free stuff,
that's a good strategy.
Be a female character. There's your little hot tip.
Yeah.
If you want some free gold your way, or if you want to be high in the ranks at some random guild just for the freebies,
do they still
do that.
Ryan, do they still do like the recruit a friend and stuff like that?
They
still
do. They do still do recruit a friend, where you get, additional rewards if you recruit one of your friends to come play the game. So if I wanted to, Skycatcher Gaming, if you want to join, hit me up. We'll link up. We'll actually, I'll take you through it. We'll get some extra rewards together. We'll get some extra bonus XP together. It'll be great. You'll love it.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Play with a friend, use the recruit a friend, get that bonus XP, get the rewards, and just, I think that it's really brilliant that they do that, because you're much more likely to get hooked I feel like the theme of this whole conversation was just that kind of like friends you made along the way. Like it's the people and stuff, and it kind of fosters that just baked into the game. So cool.
No, yeah, it's got a lot of tools to, help you make friends both in the game itself, but also bring your friends into the game from the outside as well. But anyways, I think that's going to wrap up our conversation of World of Warcraft. We're all World of Warcrafted out at this point. Of course, Lockleth is, reaching down, getting the giant Blizzard art book. Look at that thing. It's massive. Of course.
It's so heavy, Ryan. It is so heavy. Look at the thickness of this. It's thick. With two C's.
Yeah, 2 C's.
It is so thick. It's an art book. It's a coffee table book, apparently.
Oh, Deckard Cain. Is that who that is?
Yeah.
It is.
Stay a while and listen.
Yeah. Yep, Deckard Cain. Exactly what
it's the beard. It's a dead giveaway.
And it's the steel blue eyes. Like all of the landscapes. Love this thing. I don't know how long I've had it. I've had it for a few years, but it's quite a read. I definitely went through the entire thing. I'm trying not to hit my mic as I put this down. Nice. But it's quite a read. I went through the whole thing when I first bought it, and it's just nostalgic, really. Yeah. Even though I don't play and didn't play at the time when I purchased the book, it's just nice to go back and like look at all the different races and the art and all that. So yeah, I wanted to show that I pulled it off the shelf specifically.
You're actually making me very jealous right now, Lockleth, because I'm wishing that I still had with me here, instead of a box somewhere in London, Ontario, my World of Warcraft and Vanilla and Burning Crusade strategy guides, like my Prima strategy guides. I still have those with like all the art with all the different races and like a bestiary and stuff like that in it. And I was actually using those to play WoW Classic because it's actually relevant to that game, because they were written when WoW, like when Burning Crusade and Vanilla WoW were out. So it actually is has really helpful tips rather than, going to Wikipedia or Icy Veins somewhere to go look some of this stuff up. It's pretty cool to have that experience again.
Wowpedia.
Wowpedia. Exactly.
Yeah, Wowhead and whatnot. Yeah, that's definitely, I think that's something that doesn't get said enough about World of Warcraft is like, I know I feel like the zeitgeist of WoW has become somewhat negative. It's like, it's that game that causes people to get divorced, or it's that addicting game. I better not play that game or whatever. But yeah, like to your point, like it's a very well-made game that fosters friendships, has amazing art, amazing music. Like it really, there's a reason it is the king. I mean, Final Fantasy 14 has probably overtaken it at this point in that respect, but like for a long, long time, WoW was the king for a reason. It just does what it does really, really well, you know?
There's a reason why they've never had to make the game free to play in 18 years. It's been the same subscription price the whole time for a reason, because like they know people will pay it because it's that good. Or just, again, like to a point we made earlier, like for a lot of people, it's the only game they play. They don't need to play anything else. Like they pay $15 a month and they don't need to worry about other video games because World of Warcraft is that game for them. Because it's a really special game, and I know it's a special game for three of us, so I'm glad we could have this conversation and talk it out on tonight's show. So anyways, before we go, Lockleth plugs go.
So you can find me here on YouTube at Lockleth, on Hive. I'm gonna plug that everywhere until it's no longer a thing. Or you can see me here on Tuesday evenings as part of the Nintendo Drive, as part of Carpool Gaming. So I'm all over the place, it seems.
Very nice, very nice. And Seth, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm at $2 Hero on Twitter. I'm on Hive too, but I just made it so that Sean wouldn't steal my name on there.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm at $2 Hero. Yes, just like Lockleth, I'm also one of the co-hosts of the Nintendo Drive, which we do on Tuesday nights on youtube.com/carpoolgaming live, and then it gets published to podcast feeds following day. And yeah, it's just a great time. If you're into Nintendo, definitely check us out there. And Patreon stuff. I'm always making stuff on the Carpool Gaming YouTube channel as well. So
if you've seen us short on the channel, Seth probably made it.
Yeah. It's either me or Court.
Yeah. And now, of course, I always like to throw this out there too, just in case, because I know we actually have people who listen to this show who don't actually watch any other Carpool Gaming content. So it's always good to, throw introductions out there. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, on YouTube at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, and on podcast services around the globe. And thus adjourns the meeting of Team Quaxley for Lockleth and Seth Sturgill. I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 73rd level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.